recognize them. The Arabica would be like a more rounder, and the Robusta is a little bit more elongated. Now I'll come to it later. Let's go to the next one. Now the bean and the ground is very, very important. First of all, in Turkish coffee, you realize that there's a little foam on the top when they're serving, and a lot of housewives make it a very important issue that be able to serve you coffee that has this foam or crema on top. Now, let me bore you with one another detail. The purpose in the Turkish context is this foam actually insulates the coffee, so you'll enjoy it when it is hot and you can have the best aromas that's available in the coffee. Now, there's a chemical substance in the coffee which called melanoids. These substances, they hate water, but they like the gas. And this gas is produced as you roast the coffee. It is basically CO2. Some of it will escape, but once you grind the coffee, it is ready, and when the hot water attacks it, this chemical wraps around this CO2 and forms this foam. Now, again, between Arabica and Robusta, there are two differences. Arabica has more oils, and that's why Arabica, or the coffee coming from Yemen originally and from Ethiopia, it is aromatic, but it has lots of oils that carries this aromatic flavors. But then again, it would attack the substance. So basically, if you want to get a good foam, you have to use a lot of Robusta coffee. Now, I'm not going to make a big issue of which one is better, because a bad Arabica is bad coffee. So try to buy good coffee from a reliable source. Now, the importance of jezve, this is a tradition of being on wood fires. Somebody is preparing the Turkish coffee. You can see that how the jezve is sort of like fluted at the bottom. This would help it so that some of the silt during the boiling exercise is not already transferred to your coffee cup. And basically, coffee should be enjoyed with a little bit of water in the beginning, and so you enjoy the coffee, and then you can finish it with a Turkish delight. Now, this was a very important ritual, because when a young man wanted to marry, they would usually visit the bride's family, and she would be preparing coffee for him. And this, in many cases, in the old times, would be the first occasion that the young man could meet this young girl, and she would use every opportunity while preparing the coffee to bring some little pigments to her cheeks and everything. But drinking water after you enjoy the coffee is considered an insult. You have to enjoy the water before. So in one instance, the father of the soon-to-be bride realized that the man who was asking to marry his daughter was drinking some water after drinking her coffee. At this point, he turned to the young man's mother and said, "Madam, please take your son and leave my house immediately. If your son does not respect my daughter's coffee, I don't think in the future he will respect her." So there you go. It's very, very important. No matter there's so many instructions on how you make coffee, but perfect it and enjoy it. Now, this is, of course, coffee is introduced in the Ottoman Empire by a governor from Yemen who returned with some coffee, and we know that in the palace they enjoyed it, but slowly it spread around town, and I'm going to read you a small text from the Peçevi, a history. Peçevi is one of the historians. This is, let me give you the way Turkish sounds, a little bit of Turkish sound for your ears. He writes, 1554 yılında Halepli hakem ve Suriyeli Şems adında iki şahıs Tahtakale'de birer kebir dükkan açıp kahve furuşluğa başladılar. Keyfe müptela bazı yaran-ı safa, hususiyle okur-yazar makulesinden nice zürefa toplanır oldu. 20'şer 30'ar yerde meclis durur oldu. Kimi kitap okur, kimi tavla ve satrançla meşgul olur, kimi Nevgüf'te gazeller getirip marifetten bahsolunurdu. What it basically says that in the year 1554, two entrepreneurs from Syria, actually Shems, she was a woman, they found that there was an opportunity in Turkey and they came to Istanbul, they opened these stores, but pretty soon it became very, very favored places to be. Up until then, there were basically three spaces in Ottoman life. You could be at home, you could be at work, or you could be in a place of prayer. I think the coffee introduced the beginning of the Ottoman social society by creating another place that you could be. And initially it did break down barriers between different professions and people of different income. So this was the start of a new trend and the beginning of the Ottoman civil society. Not only that, eventually with the introduction of Turkish coffee by a Jewish student in Oxford, once it's introduced in England, it became the precursor of the British Gentlemen's Club. So they realized that in these places people were making, introducing new songs, playing chess, and the Istanbul gentlemen really liked this, because instead of inviting their friends in turn to expensive dinners in their homes, now they could take them to a coffee house and enjoy this fine discussion to the wee hours of the morning. Now we're going to see some images of how these are very opulent. These are not shacks, but basically eventually a lot of people invested money in it. Some of them were in the higher positions in the government. Initially, government didn't like the coffee houses because people, when they get together and they would lose sleep over a few cups of coffee, they were becoming very critical of the government. So they tried to ban the coffee houses, but eventually they realized that this attraction is so great that they could not do this anymore. So like any government, anytime, the best way for them to do was to tax them. So they taxed it and allowed it to stay open. This is another coffee interior. Now, coffee today is the second biggest export after oil. At the time, it was the biggest. So we can see even Napoleon would switch from his sort of rearing horse to a very slovenly camel, and he wanted to organize an expedition, military expedition to Egypt and Syria because the coffee supplies were not being carried out properly. So the French, they still do it. Actually, today we will see what the French could do. But you can see that because of the resources, today it was maybe oil, they still want to be involved in Syria and Egypt and basically in the Middle East. So coffee still is politically is a very important export item. It is only second to oil, but you can see that behind a simple produce, there are a lot of sort of the political and diplomatic actions were being taken. But apart from that, when we bring it to the American context, we can look at, actually I will repeat it in Boston too. On 1773 in Boston they said, "Friends, brethren, countrymen, that worst of plagues, the detested tea, shipped for this port by the East India Company, is now arrived in the harbor." This was a famous event in the American Revolutionary War, where actually, since they didn't allow the ships to empty their cargo because of the tax, they did not know actually whether these particular ships carried tea or not. As a matter of fact, some sources say that there was no tea on board. So they went on the ships and they dumped whatever, saying that this is the tea, we dumped the tea. And we know that some of them, they opened the warehouses, they dumped tea from the warehouses. But the important thing is all this tea party activity, not to be confused with the tea party activities today, was concocted in a coffee house, the Green Dragon. So coffee makes you do revolutionary things. Now, of course, Turks, certain things are very iconic for Turks. On one side, we see the Turkish alphabet book like the primary schools use, and then the Turkish rakı. These two images are from a very famous designer, the Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi. Now I'm going to switch to an American success story of the Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi. First of all, this is still a very recognized emblem for Turkish coffee. It was created in 1933 by İHA Hulusi. And not only that, they created a prototype store in the area where they used to bring the coffee and grind them after paying taxes, of course. And this is again is a franchise architectural image for a company. And of course, there is the Gizem's coffee truck, but Mehmet Efendi Mahtumlar also had their own truck, because they were not only satisfied with giving coffee to the people, but they felt like they can also distribute it to the other markets, people who couldn't come to Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi's store. Now, Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi made a great invention. This is, I'm calling it like, that's why it's an American success story. Up until Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi, people had to buy the bean, take it home, roast it, grind it, and make their own coffee. Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi said, this is not very convenient. Why don't we roast it for them and grind it for them in the finest quality so they can buy this? So this was their first invention. The next thing he did, he became richer because of this approach. He decided to go to Mecca and Medina and became a pilgrim. So after becoming a pilgrim, he felt like, what if we underweigh the coffee we sell? That would be a great sin. So he instructed all the vendors at the store to weigh the coffee perfectly, then add a little bit more on top. So never underweigh this. Once people got into the fact that Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi is not only giving you the best convenience, the best coffee, but you can actually get a little bit extra. So that's the other American way of doing things for Mehmet Efendi. Now, Mehmet Efendi, as years went by, became even richer and ended up buying a lot of land and buildings in Istanbul. Now, Istanbul is home to Sephardic Jews who were exiled from Spain. During the Byzantine times, there were synagogues, basically 3 synagogues in Istanbul. But after 1492, using the Ottoman policy of accommodation, because they felt like humans are a very important resource for the empire. So they would bring in people, not only the Jews from Spain, but from other parts of the world, Frenchmen, Hungarians, Germans, to the empire, because they felt like it brings richness and cultural diversity under their rule of istimalet, like they can provide accommodation. Now, one day, a request was made to purchase Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi's, one of his lots. And he said, I'm not really interested in selling my lots because I do it for investment. I want to keep them. And then he got curious and he said, why do you need this piece of land? And the 2 gentlemen were from the Jewish community of Istanbul. There was rules of Omar, which in Islamic lands, they would not allow the place of worship to be built new or expanded. But Ottomans turned really a blind eye to this. They had no problem in providing places of worship. And once he realized that these 2 people were asking to build a synagogue on this land, Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi said, well, I'm a very religious man, and I think your intention is also very religious. So I will not sell this land to you, but I will give this land to you. So he gave them this particular land. In that Saturday, all the synagogues in Istanbul, the hahams, which the rabbis are called in Turkey, they told their congregation that from this day on, all coffee must be purchased from Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi. So that was his other coup by reaching out to people. Now, by the time we reach this point, now I think fortunes could be told, and I don't know if once you enjoy your coffee, we can tell your fortune fortunes or whether it's good or bad. But I would like to conclude with these two remarks. Turks are generally very fatalistic. There's an old saying that ecel geldi cihane, baş ağrısı bahane. This is like death is upon the world and headache is just an excuse. But the Turks also very optimistic. So they turned this around and applied it to coffee. Dostluk geldi cihane, kahve bahane. Friendship is upon the world, coffee is just an excuse. So, without a question, enjoy Turkish coffee. But if you really insist on asking questions, you can find me around and ask your questions. Now, after this presentation, you will see that wonderful images, as we did in the beginning, will be on the screen. And this is from Vildan Hanım, who brought a lot of things from Turkey and his collection. I would like to recognize her, Vildan Hanım. She's a chemist by profession, but she prepared a wonderful collection of images about Turkish coffee, the utensils being used, and you can also get in touch with her about the usability of these items. Thanks for being here. Thank you very much. Enjoy your Turkish coffee. Your fortunes will be told. I'll see you in about 40 years.